fortunately, because I was exposed early on, it wasn't quite as intimidating. And one of the things I learned early on by some of the most incredible radio broadcasters in the country was, it's me and you. It's just me and you. There aren't millions. It's me and the one listener in his or her car or in his or her office right here, right now. I'm always ever only talking to you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Saturday Podcast. Sam Crowley here with my guest, Stephanie Stevens. Stephanie, I met in the spring of this year, and she came into our podcasting mastermind. Now she's a gold podcast member, which sounds really fancy as well. What a journey, though. I want to chat with Stephanie about her podcast, about her message. She's also an entrepreneur. She's a business owner. She has a lot of plates spinning in the air, so we'll probably talk to Stephanie a little bit about how she's able to manage that. Stephanie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome because we don't hear enough from, at least in my opinion, everyday men and women out there that are just doing the work. They're just doing the work. You're a mom, you're a business owner, but you got this fancy thing now called a podcast that you go into in 2023. Tell us the name of it and what's it about and the mission with that message as well.
Sure. So the podcast name is the Stephanie Stevens Show Podcast. Super original, but there's a method behind, the madness. And it really is that I, for a very long time, was in radio and had a career in radio, started off way, way, way back in television and then moved into radio. And so I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into a specific title for a specific genre because I really want to talk about so many various things. I've lived a lot of life in I won't say how many decades, but in my handful of decades. And so there's a lot that I want to be able to offer and encourage other people in. Communications is one of them. So this particular podcast and how I've launched now is really about communication and finding freedom through communication, because I really do believe that communication in its various forms is the key to freedom in every area of life. So that's the tagline. Communication, the key that unlocks freedom to every area of your life. And it doesn't matter if it's written communication, verbal communication, interpersonal, mass communication. There's artistic forms of communication. And then there's the biggie that people don't think much or talk about, and that's nonverbal communication. Yeah. And most of our communication is nonverbal. So I love this. I love teaching people how to tap into their specific voice, both inner voice and then also external voice, and how to share it and keep expanding, keep influencing others, keep reaching, getting their own message out.
Yeah, I love that. Which is the follow-up question I got is, how did you choose communication? Like, when did you get into the business? Where did you first start? Or did it choose you? I mean, how did you even get started in this area?
It's so interesting when I think, I'll tell you the backstory. I really think very, very early on in my life, I don't believe I felt heard. I didn't feel heard as a very small child. That's nobody's fault. It could be my own perception, right? Perception is reality. So I never felt really heard or that I had much of a voice. And I just recall being a teenager and my dad asking me at one point, what is inside of you that you think you want to pursue later in life? And I said, I don't know. And so he had us do this journaling exercise. And what kept on coming was to inform people, to encourage people and inform people, in a very large capacity, or the masses. So at 16 years old, I think I made the decision to get into broadcasting because I thought, I've got a voice. By that time, Sam, I had already been asked to be a teenage guest host, to offer perspective on teenage life on the Dawson McAllister Live show, which was a national radio show. And here I was at 16, barely able to drive to the studio on my own. And I was already on national radio. And so I thought, there's something here. So I decided to go to college to pursue communications. I did have a degree in communications, also in political science. So as I was graduating college, I thought, I'm going to take the world by storm. I am definitely going to be a political analyst. I'm going to do
Yeah.
stand-ups in front of the White House, and I'm going to change the world. So I started down that road. I actually did stand-ups in front of the White House. I worked in TV for a couple of years. And then I realized that I would really only ever be reading a script. I would not be sharing any good, and it was going to be mostly bad. It was going to be mostly bad, mostly discouraging. And guess what? It might not even be true. So I made a decision when I was in television news and I worked in national news that once I had my oldest son, whose name is Sam, my perspective on everything changed. And I thought, I cannot in good conscience go in front of small audiences, let alone large audiences, and share bad news. I can't do it. I can't do it. So I took some time off, went home with my baby, and almost simultaneously, I was offered a radio gig with a talk show. And that really opened the door to kind of talk radio, sharing ideas, and then it moved into larger platforms and radio from there.
That's pretty wild. Yeah, I got a daughter who graduated with a communications degree at University of Cincinnati last year. I think communication, I mean, obviously, being a podcaster and a speaker is paramount. I tell my kids, a lot like your father did, that's pretty wild, that you've got to be able to communicate.
Yeah.
What's going to separate you in this world is your ability to deliver a message, whether that is to a client, to your boss, to a friend, being able to communicate. That's why it just drives me insane when my kids abbreviate. And I just had this conversation with my daughter. She said, me and my wife were coming to visit. She said, when are you guys coming? And instead of writing out R-A-R-E, she just put the letter R. And I'm like, and I dove, and that's the only thing I focused on. And I go, why are you typing the letter R instead of just, she goes, Dad, that
Everybody does.
drives me. It shouldn't drive me bonkers, but it's all around that communication in an LOL, TTYL world of just this abbreviated version of the English language that we absolutely butcher to begin with. Now taking it to, does that have any, this is my question. So this is mine for you. Does that stuff drive you bonkers or not?
Drives me nuts because I don't know what half of it means.
Yeah.
TTYL, XYZ, ABC. I have no clue. What are you saying to me? Is this a yes or no? Can you just say yes, no? Even a thumbs up, thumbs down works. I don't know the abbreviations, and a lot of people do it. It does drive me nuts. But it also speaks to the culture and why I believe now more than ever before, it is imperative to help facilitate communication, to teach people to communicate. Part of communication is listening. Do we do that very often? Are we engaged in level 1 listening, or are we listening for the very thing we're going to take and launch off into our own tirade or story or, whatever the case may be? But I'm the same with my kids. I really encourage, I'll use that word, encourage, timely communication.
We all encourage in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Timely communication and clear. I'm always clarity, please. Not sure what this means. Yes, no, tomorrow, today, what are we doing? So, it's a thing, and it's a cultural thing, and it's a sort of a generational thing too.
Yeah, no, it is for sure. So, all right, back to the radio broadcasting, because that's intriguing. I don't know a lot of people that got into radio. I don't know a lot of people that got into TV. It's a very nichified space, and not everybody gets in front of a television camera. A lot of people try. Not everybody gets on a radio station. I mean, can I say how old were you when you first started in radio? Because
Sure. You sure can.
Like,
you
hey,
can
we're gonna CSI and dive in. We're gonna find out that age before the end of the podcast. But how old were you when you got into radio? And was it intimidating? Because a microphone, when you put a microphone in somebody and you hit and that red light goes on, it changes people. Were you intimidated when you first got started, or were you like, oh no, this is what I was always meant to do, and I'm a natural, and this is gonna be great?
Such a great question. So 16 was my first interface with radio, but I was around broadcasting or much earlier on because my father worked in radio broadcasting.
Oh, okay.
He had a company that helped radio stations do nonprofit fundraising events. So I was around it. I was around microphones. I was used to the equipment. It wasn't intimidating. Sitting in front of a microphone wasn't necessarily intimidating either. I'll tell you what is. Eyeballs on me.
Yep.
So some people, you're right. They freeze with the microphone. And I remember doing radio events and doing live radio events in radio stations and in studios. And the minute, you'll have a conversation like we are now, and then you'll take that microphone and you'll say, and so da da da. You'll ask the same question, you put the mic up there, and it's just, everybody freezes and paralyzes, and their stress response, nervous response kicks in, and they start to sweat, and they don't know what to say. So fortunately, because I was exposed early on, it wasn't quite as intimidating. And one of the things I learned early on by some of the most incredible radio broadcasters in the country was, it's me and you. It's just me and you. There aren't millions. It's me and the one listener in his or her car or in his or her office right here, right now. I'm always ever only talking to you. Now, I've been on platforms where there are millions of listeners countrywide, and yet it's about her.
Yeah.
Or about him in that moment. And I think that's what makes easy listening. Back in the day, it used to be a thing to say, well, folks, or you'd go to a song and then you'd say, we're back.
Yeah, yeah.
We're back from where? Did you just land from Mars? Where did you go while the song was playing? What do you mean you're back? Did you go to the restroom? Did you get a drink of water? So there's all these old school things that, have hopefully slowly phased out over the course of time. But I also then over the years, after I had about 18, 20 years under my belt in radio, I started coaching talent and helping them get into that space of effectively, efficiently communicating, and then just doing the authentic me, you. It's just me and you.
Yeah, I like that. That's fair, because so many people get intimidated by not just a microphone, even, talk about our kids, when our kids got to get up in front of class and give a presentation, sweating, nervous and stuttering and learn. I mean, you've seen the stats that most people would rather face death than face an audience. And
No.
I get it. I think we've all been there. I didn't know your oldest son. Maybe you told me this name was Sam. So that's
Yes.
very cool. I want to talk about your second child.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your second child, when he was born and how that progressed, because I know that's a huge passion of yours now.
Oh, it is. Yeah. I call him my earth angel. His name is Benjamin, and he has a diagnosis. So early on, when Ben was born, Sam and Ben were born about 15 months apart. Some people like to call them Irish twins.
Yep.
So here we were with this brand new baby, a toddler, and he was developing really neurotypically, normally. Same kind of little milestones, same beginning words. I think he was actually, one of his first words, believe it or not, I don't know if I should be proud of this, but it was ice cream. He'd say, "Ikeem," the cutest little voice.
Yeah.
He could say, "Dada, mama." He was progressing nicely. Then between the milestone of the 15-month and the 18-month marker, I started to see some really strange things. Less response, less words, often sort of staring off into space, and thought this is really bizarre. So at about 18 months, I took him to the pediatrician and asked, what do we think is going on here? Now remember, this is the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
And so she said, boy, I don't know, let's do an audio test, because she was trying to get his attention in the office as well and clap and make noises, and she couldn't garner his attention. So we went to the audiologist, found out he processes about 9 frequencies that the typical brain can't process. So he hears on a level none of us are really used to hearing. So that obviously wasn't the problem. The long story short is we did end up going through an assessment for autism and found out that he had autism spectrum disorder. That's what it was called back in the day. And I'll share something with you on the front end of that. My sister kept on saying, Steph, I wonder if he's got autism. And the first time she said that, I was so angry.
Yeah.
And I was so, what? Where would you get something like that? That's ridiculous, absurd. It stirred me up. It really bothered me, because I thought to myself, there's no cure for that. And I don't know how to handle that.
Yeah.
What would I do with that?
Right.
It's a very helpless feeling. So I poo-pooed her and thought she was ridiculous for a little while, until we went to the audiologist, found out that wasn't, really had no choice but to go down this road of assessment. And at that point, then he was assessed and diagnosed. And I don't call him autistic. I don't even say he has autism, because the truth is, Sam, it's really hard to pick. When we say people have autism, what we're saying is they're just exhibiting a series of symptoms that present in a certain way. We really don't know a ton other than it's a neurological disorder. It's not a mental illness. It's a neurological or developmental cognitive disorder. So at that point, went down the road after diagnosis of slamming headfirst into treatments. And that was a whole nother lifetime of just searching and trial and error and wow, a life-consuming process for a while.
Yeah. Is that so? So when Ben was in grade school, and how old is he now, by the way?
He just turned 26 last week.
26. Wow.
26.
So, and excuse my ignorance. That's why I have you on the show, because I really want to learn more. So I excuse my ignorance on this topic. But was he in traditional school, homeschool, virtual school? How did you navigate the real formative years of elementary, primary, high school, things like that?
Right. So what I opted to do, and there are many pathways, and I do talk about this to some degree on my podcast as well. I opted for the therapeutic route because I had read a ton saying there are these things called best outcome scenarios, where if you can get in there and get into their neural plasticity really early and really intensively, you can teach their brain to learn in new ways. And I knew some kids who had actually lost their diagnosis of autism as a result of this very, very early intensive behavioral therapy. At the time, it was called IEBT, and I actually spent time legislating for funding for IEBT in my state. So intensive early behavioral therapy. So we did this, but what it entails is all day, every day therapy. And you're literally teaching the brain, creating a baseline skill by which to build on. And the very first skill we had to teach Ben was to make eye contact, because if we could get him to make eye contact, we could get him to mimic us. And if we could get him to mimic us, do this, do this, do this, then we could get him to maybe start to mimic language or sounds or word formations or mouth formations. That was literally the pathway to teaching kids with autism new skills and even how to communicate verbally. We even taught him some nonverbal communication and sign language in the beginning too, just to try to help him have a mode of communication. Because what breaks my heart the most about those diagnosed with autism and related conditions is it's almost to some degree like being in a prison. There's so much language processing issues that we've got some very brilliant, high IQ'd boys and girls, men and women, in bodies that are constantly betraying them because their sensory systems are on overload and they can't get the language processed from their brain out. And it can become very frustrating. And then we see behaviors as a result of the levels of frustration for the inability to communicate. So that's the road we went down. It included having therapists in my home day after day, every day, stepping over our dirty laundry, kind of becoming a part of the landscape in our home. And our home then, your home is no longer your own at that point.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of sort of yielding to the process for a handful of years. Then I launched what's called the Lazarus Project with another woman and several families, and that was going to be one of the first therapeutic centers in the state to actually give the families a little bit of respite by doing about 5 hours of therapy in a center-based, environment every day. And that launched me into a whole new genre of advocacy and help with therapeutics for young kids and families.
And through all of this, you're still navigating a career. You're a wife and you have 4 children. So like my brain goes to how, because we have people listen to the podcast. All right. We have at-home mom, single dad, corporate executive, people like that. and they're like, man, I can't handle this. I mean, I've been dealt whatever this hand is that's not traditional, not normal in my mind.
Right.
How the hell am I supposed to even put one foot in front of the other when I wake up? How are you navigating marriage, career, business? And also, you said you just turned your home into an open invite for therapists to come in and try to help. That's a lot to say grace over. How'd you navigate it?
Not well, not well for a period of time. I was used to kind of juggling a lot of balls anyway, trying to raise my own kids and then also navigate a career, which I had for the most part. When Ben was diagnosed, I really released a lot of that and I had to find a new way to make money. And that came in the form of traveling and doing these on-air fundraising events, which would put me out of town for a couple of days a month, but then the rest of the month I could be at home. So I was able to make as much leaving for a couple of days and having at the time my husband and family help with the kids and just knock a week out of work and then be home the rest of the time. All of that to say, there was a day, I'll never forget it, when I had been in a little classroom setting along with Sam, my oldest, and I was going to go into the radio station to work for a few hours. I got a phone call from the care facility. It was a little Montessori school. They were there for about 4 hours, a couple days a week. I got a call and the woman said, Benjamin is locked in the bathroom and he's upset and we can't seem to get him out. Well, at that point in time, a million questions went through my mind, like, how does the bathroom door lock from the inside? You have small children. Anyway, my mind raced and I started to panic knowing he doesn't have a way to communicate. He's probably terrified and I need to get to him immediately. Left the station, left everything as it was, got into my car and started to speed toward the Montessori school. On the way there, I had I had my first panic attack. And it was, I'll just never forget it. It was so scary. And I didn't know what was going on. And I thought I was dying. I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought I was dying. I remember being on the highway and looking off. There's a big box store off on one of the exits. And I thought, if I can just make it into that parking lot, and if I die, then at least I'll have my wallet out with my ID. Somebody will find me. They'll find my information and they'll go get my kids. I mean, this is when you're in a state of panic and your brain is only looking to survive in that moment because all of the responses are on high alert. That's what those are the ways in which you think. And I remember seeing that exit and I thought, no, I can make it one more exit. I'll be that much closer. I had the windows down. I was praying to Jesus, help me. I mean, you name it. I was doing it. And when I made it to the Montessori, I just scooped my kids up. I left. I went home. I called my mom and I said, I almost died. I don't know what's going on. I have a huge problem. Something's happening to me. And she came over and she knew exactly what it was. And that then, Sam, launched this almost 10 years of dealing with panic and anxiety disorder, diagnosed with panic attacks. And then, of course, because I was trying to hold so much the weight of the world on my shoulders, I had adrenal fatigue and all sorts of physical things that came along with trying to do everything I was doing. Listen, I was doing it. Nobody knew.
Yeah. I was
Nobody
just asking
knew.
if anybody noticed on the outside.
Not a person, not a soul. In fact, I used to have people say to me, how do you do it? How are you doing it? And every time somebody would say that, I would get a surge of anxiety because I knew, number one, I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing all of this. But number two, what the hell is what's my choice?
Yeah.
Do you have another option for me? Tell me my options. Do I go curl up in a ball in the corner and cry? I mean, I'll do that. Don't get me wrong. I'll do that when everyone's in bed and the lights are out.
Yeah.
But on a day-to-day functionality basis, what are my options? I didn't really have any at the time. So I kept firing on all 4 cylinders, burning my body out, burning out my adrenals and just wearing myself down. And that lasted for probably far too long. But I'll tell you what, having been through all of that, I am so grateful it's hard to say you're grateful for
Yeah.
the suffering, that you went through. But I'm grateful that I can identify with what anxiety looks like or panic disorder and all of those things, because very few people, unless you've experienced that, you can't identify. People used to say things to me like, just think about something else. Think about something positive. Okay,
Okay.
why didn't I think of that? Well,
Great
okay,
idea. Yeah.
perfect. Problem solved. The brain and the body doesn't allow you to. Everything is on high alert, all stress responses, all of the hormones and the organs attached are firing all of that adrenaline and cortisol all the time, just rapid fire. So that's not how it works. It's a process to sort of decompress. It's a process to pull those systems and processes down and then create a brand new baseline for yourself. And that took years. But now I can help others. Now I've got a platform to work from. I get it. Been there, done it. Yeah, it totally sucks. You are coming through it though, and there's another side to it. There's a through the tunnel
Yeah.
to the right side.
Yeah. That's pretty wild, man. I mean, I think we all have our crash and burn moment in life.
Yeah.
Several of them. I don't.
Yep.
If you don't, I don't think you're trying. I mean, if you can fog a mirror, if you have a pulse, you're going to have those types. Maybe not a
Yeah.
panic attack. Maybe not anxiety driven. Although I can't say I've had that particular moment many times. I've wondered, oh my God, I'm like short of breath. Like you don't know when the bills are going to get paid. Where's the
Yep.
money coming in from? Are your kids safe? I mean, those types of moments and things like that. But now, you've always kind of, I know a little bit about Stephanie now. She had a platform, but now you've got this podcast. And I don't know, like, I'm not trying to connect dots or anything like this, but you have Ben. And by the way, I wanted to ask this follow-up question before I go into the next one. What's everyday life like for Ben now at the age of 26?
Well, I have a program I created. I created a company with a business partner of mine. We've worked together on and off over the years. We both sat on boards of directors, on advocacy groups. And so her and I, when both of our sons turned 21, because that's when the therapeutic portion ends really for these kids. So they can be in therapeutic schools all the way up until the age of 21. And then they kind of get released into the world. And the state just basically says, have a good life. And we knew there was nothing viable that we wanted for our sons. We were going to need to create it. So we created this program and this company that we now have 3 locations for, soon to expand to a 4th. And it provides community support services for young adults with autism and also related conditions. So not just autism specifically, but also other types of developmental disabilities or disorders. I don't like the word disabilities. And then also, cognitive delays, et cetera. So our teams take them out and about every day from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And they do recreational activities. They do a ton of volunteer activities. They do music classes, cooking classes, art classes, you name it. I mean, they're out engaged in the community all day in teams and groups.
So you start a business.
Yeah.
No offense, but you're a communication and a poli-sci major.
Right.
How do you have, like, you've got 3 locations opening a 4th? That's business finance background. How did you even start that? That's pretty wild.
So first the conversation, what are we going to do? And I remember it was so funny because my business partner, when we were talking about it, she was leaving the place she was a CEO at, which was an autism school. And she called me on the phone and she's like, what do we do now? And I said, you know what we need to do. And she said, no, I'm going to go be a flight attendant. And I said, she was joking. I'm like, yeah, wouldn't that be great? But you're not.
Yeah.
We have no choice. We have no choice. We are called into this for such a time as this. And I'll tell you the truth, how we did it, trial and error. I would go to the radio station and I would sit on my computer in between talk segments and I would research. And at first, you had to go through the state, get the name, register, all of that. And then there's these huge spider webs of Department of Human Services and states and counties and contracts and service agreements and authorizations. And it takes a lot to actually qualify for a license for this type of work. But as miracles would have it, with a poli sci, and a communications, and she had a law degree and had practiced early on before her autism advocacy years. So the two of us had the credentials, so to speak, to actually procure the licensure. And then from there it was, hi Google, how do you da 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 da?
Seriously, you just got on
Oh
Google.
my gosh, we did. I mean, we knew a thing or two. Well, first of all, we're fast learners. We were willing to learn. We went to another woman in our community who had a similar type of organization. We sat down for hours with her and had coffee, and wondered if we could all partner together. We didn't end up doing that because hers is a bit of a different genre than ours. But we learned a lot from her. We learned what we want to do, what we didn't want to do. And then the rest was making phone calls to the state, making phone calls to the Department of Human Services, making phone calls. What do we need to do and to launch? And I'll tell you what, I'm a pretty efficient. In other words, when I sit down to do something, I just do it.
Yep.
I get it done. And so she's the same way. So we really both sort of put our minds to it, and just today we're going to do this. Today we're going to work on counties. Tomorrow we're going to work on, licensure. Friday we're going to start looking at buildings and find out how much it's going to cost to lease, how much it's going to cost to run. What do we need in terms of finances to be able to actually launch this baby? And then, Sam, from a financial standpoint, I mean, here's really the miracle of it all. We put in just about zero. Now, our blood, sweat, and tears are worth to infinity and beyond, right?
Yep.
But we had parents who were so excited about having their kids in this program that they were more than willing to seed us non-interest-bearing loans to launch. And again, that was the beauty of being in a community where there was a need. We knew we were going to be able to fill the need. We knew we were going to be able to do it in a very unique way. And others saw the vision and bought in. Now, we had our investors paid off within the first 6 months because that was our intention. And we did. We didn't make a lot personally individually in those first 6 months, but we were perfectly fine with that. I was still doing my radio gig. I was doing the juggling act. And I do talk about one of these issues on my podcast, and the idea that for me, there wasn't balance. Balance has really never been a thing. I kind of think balance is bogus. I love the idea of harmony. There are times in life where you are going to just go and you're going to put a ton of time, energy, and effort into a thing. And these things will have to come down a little bit while this thing comes up and you spend more attention. But then at some point when this thing is working really, really well, then you can bring that down and you can elevate another area of your life and really focus in and pay attention to that. But I don't know if balance is possible when you've got a really tight time frame and a really strong vision.
Yeah.
That's just my theory.
That's incredible passion. I mean, that's the passion that pulls, I think, everybody through, because if you weren't as passionate as you were, with every right to be, none of that would have got going, because you were just so dialed. Like, you needed to find the solution. So, if there's no solution, create one, which is a nice bumper sticker. I mean, that's nice to say. But actually doing it, you've referenced a few episodes on your podcast, and getting to that. When you launched this podcast back in the spring of this year of 2023, what was the goal of launching the Stephanie Stevens Show? By the way, plug for Stephanie. We'll talk about how to connect with her at the end of the show as well. But if you're checking anywhere you get downloads, anywhere you get podcasts from, just type in Stephanie Stevens or the Stephanie Stevens Show. You can find her podcast there and subscribe. What was the goal a few months back when you first launched? Has it changed at all? What are your thoughts on this new podcasting platform that you're now on, getting your message out there? Who's the audience for? Why are you doing it? And when you first got started, you didn't have a podcast. Has that vision changed at all? Or are you still zeroed in on the same place you were a few months back? And who needs to hear it? Like, why are you doing it?
Yeah. Why am I doing it? I'll take that question first. Years ago, when I was still working for other people in radio, a friend of mine who was in radio said to me, you have been through a lot of stuff. And again, single mom, raising 4 kids, one with special needs, doing this, doing that, doing this, doing that. She's like, dude, you need a podcast. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't podcast. That would be great, but I don't know the first thing about it. And she really encouraged me. This was, again, years ago, and I just wasn't very familiar with the space. I thought it was a great idea because then I could really own creatively what it was that I was distributing, the content, the message, the passion, the heart, you name it. I could own it instead of working for somebody else. And there are limitations to working, for others. We all know that to some degree. And so I noodled it, I thought about it, and I just didn't have the tools or the resources. I just didn't, and I had no help. So that went back onto the back burner. Now that my business is up and running and we've got it to a place where it doesn't need me in there every day, fixing things, doing things. I'm not in the trenches anymore because we've got a great team in place now. Now I can take a breath and step back, and I wanted another creative outlet. This thing of communication lives on the inside of me, and helping people with special needs is also a passion. So having, like I said, the harmony, right? Having the strings focused in this direction for a handful of years to get it up and running, I was feeling the loss of the winds.
Yeah.
For example, or the percussions. I was feeling the need to really, I got some stuff to say, and I think I might have some things that might encourage other people. How can I do that without going back to working for somebody else? The podcast was the total, absolute no-brainer solution. So this podcast is for everybody because it's going to touch every area of life and the things that I've experienced and things that many people experience. Marriage, divorce, parenting, being broke, having much, feeling desperate, being depressed, feeling anxiety and anxious, feeling like you're on the top of the world, you name it, launching a business. There's just so much. There's so much there that a lot of people can experience. And also, I'll let you in on this little secret. I worked in Christian radio circles for a very, very long time. It's not super popular to be a single mom in Christian radio because the taglines for all the stations were family friendly. Well, here was my family, me, my kids. That's my family.
Yeah.
And that is a family. And so I wanted to also encourage people. And I had a sneaking suspicion that despite the fact that management and ownership didn't want to acknowledge this, the reality is I was more common than the family they were speaking to. Like I knew good and well, probably at least half of our audience was single or had been at one point in time and was remarried or something like that. So I knew there was an audience and a point of communication, a point of authenticity that was missing that I could touch. I could reach them and touch them and support them. And we could have a real, true, authentic connection in what our families look like in this period of time. So it's for everybody, especially people who want to really dive deep into tools for communication, wiser, more efficient, true, vetted, accurate, timely communication. Writing, verbal, nonverbal, or in an artistic form. And there are many, dance, sculpture, the performing arts, the standing arts. There's so much that I do. I want to help people get to the place where they can speak efficiently and they can speak their truth and they can do it in a way that is well received.
Yeah. Now, with that, do you have a plan now? You've got from your brick and mortar business, you have a fourth location opening up. That's amazing. You're a better person than I, because not only am I psychologically unemployable, I've learned I can't have employees either. So I'm no good being the boss or having a boss. So congratulations to you for doing that. Is there, with the Stephanie Stevens show or the Stephanie Stevens brand, now you've got your own platform. Are there any plans down the road to monetize that? Any services, any products in your vision right now, maybe in the next 6, 12, 18 months that, okay, I've got this podcast, I've got this platform, I've got this brand I'm building on my own. Where do you want to take that? Is that a monetizable idea yet?
Probably, yeah. For sure it will be soon. I just am diving now into brainstorming exactly what that'll look like. I've come up with something thanks to you and your wisdom. It's called the voice method. And I'll start to unpack that slowly on my podcast. And it's really going to get into First, the victory over inner communication errors,
Yeah.
VOICE. And we're going to deal with inner voice, how imperative it is to get that inner voice clear and straight in order to effectively, efficiently, and powerfully communicate externally. So I'm definitely going to be diving into that on the podcast, but also I am really excited about launching a mastermind or some type of usable, user-friendly product that somebody can download, listen to, go through the different steps and processes to clean up some of this stuff internally and then externally as well. So that's a long answer to the short question. Yes, eventually there will be some things that I can offer the audience that is really tangible and specific to them.
Yeah. No, I like it. I mean, it doesn't need to happen today, but I always love to hear the vision from podcasters of I'm going to find my voice, which you're doing right now, teach others how to find their own voice, which is awesome. And then down the road, when I'm ready, to monetize this idea, I'll be ready for it. You're no stranger to being able to monetize things. So there's no rush to get that done. I think it's a great vision to have at your pace, because a lot of podcasters get started like, great, I've got 5 downloads. How do I make money with this? I'm like, hey,
exactly.
Hold on a minute. So here's an interesting fact you do not know about Stephanie. I got to ask you about this Mrs. Minnesota thing. Okay. Because again, total naive. I didn't know that. I knew there was a miss of all of these pageants, but I was unaware that there is a Mrs. going on in these states as well. So you're Mrs. Minnesota 2017. Do I have that right so far? Did I at least get that part right?
Yes.
Okay.
You got it right.
Where was the idea? How did that come to play? Because again, let me just remind you of your journey, okay? 4 kids, mom, business owner, career, and a million other things going on. What the hell were you thinking? You gonna take one more thing on and do Mrs. Minnesota? Our audience needs to hear this.
Okay. Yeah, I asked myself that question often. What the hell were you thinking? I asked myself that about a lot of things. However, in this case, it is so funny because when I was a kid, I saw these pageants come on the television. And I remember being at my grandparents' house and sitting in their bedroom in front of I think it wasn't even a color TV at the time. I'm not that old. I just think in their bedroom, they didn't have a color TV.
Understood.
Color TV had been invented.
Had been invented. That's good.
It had been invented. It was a thing. I just remember seeing these girls in this pageant and marveling. They're like the queen of something. I don't know what, but wow, it's so amazing and interesting. But I also intuitively knew very early on, listening at 5 and 6 and 7 years old, this must really be about how they look, because what they're saying can be kind of very bizarre and strange and not so clear, not so concise.
We've all seen all of those clips of pageants where the answers are like, huh?
Are you exactly? Or are you still speaking English? Or did you hear are you answering a different question from 5 minutes ago? Because that has nothing to do with what you were just asked. So I remember seeing that and having zero desire or even like for this thing called pageants. I could tell pretty early on it was very objectifying. And I didn't like that. I thought women should be honored for what they bring to the table, for their value, for their minds, of course, their inner and outer beauty, but for their incredible contribution. And so I just never was of interest. Then, and I was married. I've been married twice. It was so fun the first time. I decided to do it again for a second time. So at the time I was married, and I had a friend who had been a title holder in a state. And we were having a conversation one day and she said, "You need to do this." And I laughed in her face. I said, "That's absurd. I would never do that. I'm not a pageant girl. I don't even believe in pageants. They're silly and ridiculous." "Why?" She's like, "Listen, hear me now. I promise you, if you did this and you won, it would open doors for your platform and this autism advocacy that you would never imagine." She said, "It will put you on stages that your radio career would never put you on. I promise. I guarantee it. I guarantee it." It's like, for real? Seriously? No.
Yeah.
She kept challenging me. And finally I thought, if there's even partial truth to what she says, that I could now start being introduced to new areas and really raise awareness to this adult autism thing, it might be worth it. And so I was like, oh my gosh, can't believe I'm doing this. Fine, I'll do it. But to tell you what, Sam, when I decided to do it, the day I made the decision that I was going to do it to win
Oh yeah.
every category.
There you go. Now now the competitive Stephanie comes out.
That's it.
Here we
I
go.
wasn't doing it to make friends. I wasn't doing it for the experience. I was going to do it to win. And I was going to win every category. I was going to win the media category, the interview, both on stage and judges interview. I was going to win the fitness, and I was going to win the evening gown. Now, I opted to be in the international pageant system because there was no part of me that was going to prance around in a bikini. Zero. What they have in that particular system instead is a fitness portion where you have to exhibit your fitness, your levels of fitness and physical, I don't know. It is partially based on appearance, but it's more about your muscle tone. It's almost more like a fitness competition.
Yeah.
So your fitness acumen and what are you doing in the gym and things like that. So during that portion, you come out and I did everything to win. I mean, I worked with a great trainer. I was in physically fit competition form. I worked with a pageant coach that taught me how to walk in high heels, which I had never done. At 5'11", I had literally never walked in heels before. So I had to work with this woman to learn how to literally hold my weight on the top of my two legs with pencils holding me up off of the ground.
I'm just laughing. How long are we talking about? Like, how long did all this coaching and preparation go on for?
Like 6 months, 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. Within a year. But I tell you, when I put my mind into doing something, I want to do it well. I'm a fan of excellence, not perfection.
Yeah.
Somebody said, and I think this is so smart, in the pursuit of perfection, you find excellence.
Yeah.
And I have struggled in the past with perfectionism and trying to be liked and people pleasing. That's another day, another podcast. But I really thought this, if I can challenge myself in these ways, if I can do this in this period of time, that will give me another series of confidence to do some stuff that's outside of my own comfort zone and outside of the box for me. And it really does. I mean, when you do something you never thought you'd do or never could do, and you do it and you succeed, your confidence to do those types of things skyrockets. You build a baseline for more and better and bigger things.
So pageant day, how many women are there on pageant day?
Oh my goodness, I can't even remember. So there's
20, 200, 1,000?
Yeah. 20. Well, there's a bunch of different categories. So, there's the adult, and then there's the teen, and then there's the young kids, so there's all, it's a big production. Oh my goodness. It's a big production. And
is it just Minnesota? The Minnesota adults, was it just in that particular pageant that you were in? Is it just women from Minnesota, or you said international? So is there other people from outside the state there too?
So it's called international because you compete in your state, and then if you win your state, you go to an international pageant. So when I went to when I won state and then went to, I think it was in West Virginia, they host it in different places all over the place. That particular year, it happened to be in the U.S., in West Virginia. And women from all over were there. Women from Russia, Asia, Eastern European countries, Scandinavian countries. There were kids from everywhere, but there were also adults from all over the world. And I ended up placing in the top 10 in the international as well, which was, again, it was a huge disappointment to me because I'm there to win. Same thing. I'm here to win. I'm not here to make friends. But the experience, you end up meeting the most incredible women. Firefighters, meteorologists, scientists, doctors. These are a group of smart women. Again, I think because that international pageant system draws a different genre of women, very accomplished business women. It's not about the looks. You have to bring to the table, you have to prove that you have done something in life, that has been a substantial contribution to your community and beyond. So I do appreciate it for that reason.
And did it do what your friend originally said 6 months prior? Did it open doors for your real passion and your cause?
Absolutely. Oh, it did. And again, that was the delight of it all. I didn't know if that was actually going to be a thing. But when I started getting phone calls, can you come and speak? Can you be the keynote speaker at? can you do the graduation address? What? Yeah, sure. So I was able to gain new headway into new genres with schools and colleges, and helping to cultivate more expansive groups and advocacy for autism. But Sam, it was after that then. That was first. Then the year after I fulfilled all of my obligations in the title, and there are many, right at like a month later is when I decided to launch the business. But I'll tell you what's so interesting. It's divine timing on all of it. It is divine timing. I wrapped up that year successfully, handed the crown. Well, I got to keep my crown, but handed a crown off to, the next.
Not the one I won. You're not getting the one I won. I worked hard for this.
So I handed off a crown, successfully released that, but it had gained me access into other groups and schools that were doing work with kids with autism. And so I immediately started having meetings because I was Mrs. Minnesota International. They knew me, they knew my name, they knew my platform, and they were more than willing to sit down and start talking about how to create an adult program. There's lots of kids programs, now we need something for adults. So divine timing on it all in that way, just the way me being introduced to you was totally divine timing in the podcast thing, because I knew I needed to do something. I needed a creative outlet. There's a message I wanted to give to people. I wanted to sow seeds of hope and encouragement and laughter and levity and expansion into people's lives. And boom, it was that perfect timing where I found out about you, was amazed by your work, and was able to really learn a ton from you and the work that you've done over the years with your own podcast and helping others. I'm so grateful. I'm grateful, and I'm also appreciative.
Yep.
I think those are two different things. I'm truly coming from a heart space of, wow, this is amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, I love it all. The whole story. Man, we covered a lot. I'm a little bit tired only from just thinking of everything that we've covered and how much work went into all of that. I love that Mrs. Minnesota story. I just think that is from a preparation to a commitment standpoint, and the doors that opened. Ultimately, the big win was that you got this new platform to really advocate for your message that you're really passionate about. And all the thousands of individuals that are going to be impacted by that one decision, not all the other ones we talked about that you've done, but just the Mrs. Minnesota. I wanted to bring it up. It's a very interesting story, but it has a great outcome to it as well. The doors that opened to help you get your message out there. And now you've got the podcast, which is going to open a whole bunch of other doors for you as well. Mm-hmm. So I just want to congratulate you on all of that. I mean, it's like you've lived 6 lifetimes already, and
that's how it feels sometimes, honestly. And we haven't even scratched the surface.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's like, we're coming up on an hour, and it's like, you just barely said hello, but the audience is going to benefit from this because there's going to be snippets in there for a lot of different people for where they currently are in life, from you being on the highway, trying to get to the next exit. We've all been on our highway just trying to get to the next exit, to being an advocate for not just your one son, but your 4 children, from going through the 2 marriages, the anxiety, the panic attack, building the business. So here comes the wins, building 3 centers, now a 4th, launching your podcast. And oh, by the way, the successful broadcasting career. I think to sum it up, just from this listener's perspective, my own perspective, is you never give up. You don't. Like you have crashing lows like every human being does on the planet. Mm-hmm. But there's something just about you, like you don't give up. And if I'm listening to this podcast back, that's not all of it applies to me, because I'm not going to be in a Mrs. Ohio pageant, for example. Okay.
You never know. You probably could. Not that you'd want to, just saying.
True. But I really resonate with, and your vulnerability. Look, you didn't have to share this stuff, okay? But when you say you want your podcast to be authentic, when people listen to this particular interview, they get that. Like, it's obvious that you're not here to, pull down the curtain only on certain aspects and open it up on different ones. So I want to thank you for being on the podcast. I think it was amazing. I love your story. I know the audience is going to love your story. For all the listeners out there, couple things. You can just type into iTunes or Spotify Stephanie Stevens, or you can just go to the Stephanie Stevens Show on wherever you download podcasts. Plug into it, listen to a few of our episodes, subscribe to it. you're going to vibe with a lot of that content because we're all on this journey, man. We're all on this journey. So, Stephanie, thank you for being on the podcast. See,
Thank you so
this
much.
wasn't so hard, right? I mean, this was so easy.
so fun. It was
Yeah.
so fun. Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. I'm so grateful.
No, my pleasure. And congratulations. You're inside of our mastermind, so I will see you very soon.
Yes.
No doubt about that. But I think all the other, everybody else listening, make sure you find Stephanie online with her podcast. Give it a listen and subscribe. Stephanie, I will see you inside our podcast mastermind.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Hey, another podcast episode in the books. Thanks so much for watching. Hey, a couple things. Number one, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss a future episode. Number two, can you like the video? Helps all that algorithm juice get going. We're looking for amazing people like you. And when you like the video, it helps us out. And here's the last thing and the most important thing. Everybody has a story to share and a lesson to teach, and that means you. Get that message out there, all right? And make every day a Saturday. I'll see you on the next episode.